Beep, 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 beep. Welcome to the court of the Edijester. How the devil are we? Right, now. Oh yeah, become a warrior teacher. Buy me a coffee. Subscribe to my Substack. Anything you can do to help will be appreciated. End of the month, 29th. Oh, scary. Right, so. This is a long read from Spiked. And I would like to thank Joanna Williams, who has appeared at the Battle of Ideas. I was there as well. I appeared there for her ongoing work in the field of wokery. So what we've got here is a long read about schools. So in keeping with this morning, where I covered a loon in Canada called Christopher Wells, we've now got something about how schools are turning kids against their families. It's very important that parents are aware of what is going on. So I'm going to ask you, if you would, to share this far and wide, please, wherever you see it, either on YouTube, if you want to watch it with adverts, or on or on Substack, where you can get this without adverts if you subscribe for the $2.50 a month or 30 quid a year. Right, so how schools are turning kids against their families. This is becoming one of the most important things that parents need to understand, and it's also one of the things that I get asked the most questions about. So I'm going to take us through a brief jaunt of some of this, and then I will put the links downstairs in the doobers and recommend strongly that you go and read it so that you're in a full understanding of exactly what is going on here. So let's begin. Education in the UK has become ever more politicised in recent years. Through the curriculum and beyond, our schools are being used to inculcate children with values that may run directly counter to those of their family and community. As I explore in a new report published this week, this report is called Teachers or Parents, Who is Responsible for Raising the Next Generation? The politicisation of education has taken three main forms. And this is a very important beginning that you need to understand. First, new subjects have been added into the school curriculum that are inherently political in nature. For example, relationships and sex education, RSE, or I think in some places known as PSHE, lessons cover contested concepts like gender identity and the nature of intimate relationships, while so-called citizenship classes look to cultivate particular attitudes to the nation and the environment. Second, new politicised content has been introduced into more traditional academic subjects. Geography focuses on sustainability and environmentalism. Literature becomes a vehicle for exploring attitudes towards race and gender, and history centres the sins of Britain's past. Now, just a point on that second one there, which is something that I've touched on previously, and that those of my regular viewers will remember, is that this is a template, the template of critical social justice, laid across everything. And that, I think, is what is being meant here. You've got the core assault on education and on children is the initial point there made by Joanna, which is the new subjects being added via the RSE, because they've corrupted that as well, corrupted PSHE. And secondly, this is where the template is used. So you've got the hub, which is the first one, and the template is the second one, and that is laid over everything: geography, mathematics, art, everything. So it will say Johnny is non-binary, and it's got 3 apples. If he loses 1 apple, how many apples has he got? It'll be that type of thing. Or Jenny is trans, and Jenny is reading Emily Bronte. View that through the eyes of gender owls, right? Whatever it may be. Do you get the idea? So that once they put that template across, they can pass off any nonsense as being education, when in fact it's 100% indoctrination. And then thirdly, pupils now pick up messages outside of timetabled lessons through assemblies, guest speakers, charity days, and policies around behaviour and uniform. This extra or hidden curriculum has become fertile ground for activist teachers. I would add into that, Joanna, and I hope you don't mind me doing so, affinity groups, which I think Joanna has missed a trick by not mentioning, but affinity groups are dangerous. Now, if you've got an affinity group for crochet, nobody cares. If you've got an affinity group for, I don't know, riding bikes, shuttlecock, right, table tennis, okay, I don't care about an affinity group for that. What I care about is affinity groups that are based on identity, the idea of identity, which is an utter nonsense. But things like race, sexuality, these are the ones that you need to worry about. I was talking to a parent yesterday who said that they'd gone to the school and that their child had been asked at 11 years old if they'd like to join the LGBTQ club. The parent was asking me, do I think the child should be allowed to? And my response was no, they absolutely should not be allowed to. This is where they are pushing this activism on children is in these affinity groups. So it's interesting that Joanna doesn't mention it. I would have thought that goes nicely with that third point there she's making about picking up messages off of out of timetabled lessons. In May 2024, in one of its final acts in office, the Conservative government announced new guidance for the teaching of RSE. Children were not to be taught about sex before the age of 9, and contested ideas about gender identity were not to be taught as fact. This was an important step towards altering a curriculum that had come to be perceived as overly sexualised and highly politicised. In order to appreciate the concerns of parents and the lack of trust some have for teachers, we need to consider what schools were offering children prior to the most recent government's intervention. Now, the fact of the matter is that it doesn't appear to have changed anything. And then I got a message yesterday afternoon to say that somebody had been to a school which previously had this nonsense up, had visited 10 classrooms to see what their child was up to, and found none of it anywhere in the school. So things maybe, I don't want to be, too sort of, yay, we're off, we're going to do something. But I'm quietly reassured by that, and I hope that you are too. Previous statutory guidance on RSE had been introduced in 2019 and came into effect in 2021. The new curriculum, just move that up for you, the new curriculum was influenced by groups like Stonewall and the World Health Organization and promoted a shift from sex to sexuality education. There's the nub of the problem. Saying to kids, this goes here and that goes there, and here's the result, or some people are X and some people are Y, get over it, is sex education. Sexuality education is a different thing altogether. It's a profoundly leftist idea. The left. The far right is like, in the dark, don't scare the horses. The left, screw who you want. Here's a 1,000-page manual. That's what I think. Classes in secondary schools were to cover topics such as consent, sexual exploitation, online abuse, grooming, coercion, harassment, rape, domestic abuse, forced marriage, honour-based violence, and FGM. Unbelievable. In addition, schools were to teach children about gender identity and same-sex relationships. Children were taught not to assume that cisgendered people, heterosexual relationships, or the traditional family were or are in any way normal. And there you can see they've got a picture there of an activism group made up of young children. Help us save the planet. See, this is what they're using children. This is this Freirean notion I mentioned this morning of the teachings of Pablo Freire and following those sort of cod ideas of his. Significantly, while parents maintained the right to withdraw their children from sex education, they could not remove them from relationship classes. This has not only made attendance in the most overtly politicised and contested lessons compulsory, it also effectively annulled the right to withdraw children from sex education classes. When pupils looked at their school timetables, they saw RSE as a single subject. Withdrawing children from sex education while ensuring they attended mandatory relationship lessons would have required them to enter and leave a classroom at 5-minute intervals. This is how they work. We've seen the forced teaming of the LGB with the TQ+. We've seen the forced teaming of the NHS with the lunacy of trans care and gender diversity. We're now seeing here in the schools, what they do is they force team the needed stuff with the stuff that is activist-led and nonsense in order to be able to infiltrate the curriculum. Again, remember the placing of the template. So when you're going to schools, if you're a parent and you want to know what's going on with your kid, you've got to ask, is the template across the curriculum? Can't just go in and go, I want to look at the RSE. You need to look at the whole curriculum. You need to ask them specific questions about what is in that curriculum. Have you infiltrated this into other subjects? That's what needs to be asked. We then move on to, in June 2022, members of the House of Lords complained that parents were being prevented from seeing by what was being delivered to their children as part of RSE lessons. A few weeks later, Labour MP Rosie Duffield, if you don't know, resigned from the Labour Party yesterday. That upset that Nadine loon. She resigned yesterday. Go on, Rosie. Go on, Rosie. And asked the then Education Secretary, Nadim Zahawi, loon. No, that's not him. That's not what I'm thinking of. No, sorry. Maybe he's not a loon. As if he was disturbed by reports that head teachers were being prevented from sharing sex education materials with parents. These interventions reflected a growing concern among parents that children were being routinely exposed to material in RSE lessons that was sexually explicit, ideologically driven, and scientifically inaccurate. These lessons sexualized children at an inappropriate young age and did so without parental knowledge or consent. Again, yes, but also recall that what we see is the placing of the template. That's the most important thing. So if you're a teacher who wonders what these activist teachers are up to, do some work, find out a bit about Freirean teaching. If you're a parent and you're concerned about what your child is doing, or you've not yet looked Now's the time, because they are getting them younger and younger and younger, and it's got nothing to do with anything else other than making activists of your children. This is a purely activist framework placed over the existing curriculum, and that goes from primary schools, even nurseries in some cases, right the way through to universities, which are hotbeds for this nonsense. So I hope that's a nice little introduction there to this great article. Please do go and read it. It's on Spiked, and there's much more to it than that. I've only just skimmed the surface. It is a long read. You'll need a coffee and a Leclerc. I recommend a Leclerc. Other than that, come be a Warrior teacher. I hope you find the article interesting. Please let me know what you think in the comments, wherever you find this video. World peace, all that stuff. The usual. All right. I'll see you all later. Have a great day. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.